If you've been living under a rock, maybe you haven't heard about this new Netflix docuseries called Cheer, but everybody else has heard about it, they've watched it, and they got a lot of thoughts and opinions and just want to talk about it. So I watched it over the course of 5 or 6 days with my wife, who was a cheerleader in high school, not a competitive cheerleader, but a cheerleader nevertheless. Were you a cheerleader?
I was not a cheerleader.
Okay, well then growing up, because Bea and Jonathan are known to be opinionated, right? We have opinions about everything. What were your thoughts of cheerleaders when you were growing up?
Honestly, I didn't think it was a sport.
Okay.
I really didn't. I mean, I just thought it was, something girls did to look pretty and just have fun. I didn't think it was that athletically demanding. So I just thought it was something you did because you had nothing else to do, honestly.
Yeah.
Growing up. I don't think that now.
Sure. Well, I mean, growing up in my high school, there was cheerleaders. There was no male cheerleaders. There was really there was very little kind of tossing or aerobics. It really was a lot more about getting the crowd
hyped, yeah.
Hyped.
Like hype girls, hype women.
And they would have choreography, but we also had a drill or flag team.
Yes.
As well.
Yeah, we did as well.
And so I probably didn't. Not probably. I didn't think of it as a sport either, but I also think we're talking about cheerleading in a different level when we're talking about competitive cheer, which is really what the Netflix show focuses on. So for those of you that aren't familiar, it follows this junior college in Corsicana, Texas, Navarro College, and they basically are the Alabama of competitive cheerleading.
Yes.
They have been national champion. They are the program, the elite program. In a lot of ways, were people that could go to Division I schools and cheer, because cheerleading for them is their passion. It's their focus. They'll go to this tiny town in Texas to cheer at a junior college because it's really the apex of that field. And through 6 episodes, we get to meet a number of team members that we can talk about here in a moment, and then we get to meet the coach, Monica.
Yeah.
And so you actually you binge watched this.
I totally did. I binge watched it because I was curious, but then after watching like one episode, and I'm like, this is interesting. Yeah. I'll sit here and watch a little bit more, and then I ended up watching the whole thing.
Tell me what your impression was of the show.
I mean, initially I thought, okay, it's just going to be another cheerleading something or something like that. But after watching it, and after the first episode, I realized there was more depth to the characters, or not characters, but to the kids, and their backgrounds was so interesting.
Sure.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is more intricate than I thought, because it's not just another story or reality show about kids cheering. There's more to it with their background and their history and what they came from and what they're fighting for. And I mean, it was more deep. And I thought, this is not your typical, we're just gonna cheer for fun. This is live or die. I mean, some of them are really escaping really hardship, and if they weren't cheering, they would be doing something awful. So it was a lot more meaningful than I thought it would be.
Okay. Yeah. I'd heard about it, and so I was naturally curious. Watched it with my wife, who was a cheerleader, who's always accused me of like looking down on cheerleading, and therefore looking down on her, and that's not true. I look down on my wife for completely different reasons.
But not that.
And we don't have enough time this morning to go into those. Trust me, if she was going into the things about her husband,
we'd go in.
This would be a telethon.
Yeah.
But anyhow,
it would get great views though.
But the interesting thing about this show, which I really enjoyed, was as soon as it really started to profile the backstory of several characters that have a lot of kind of hardship, maybe even trauma, and family issues, it made it more captivating, but it immediately removed my ability to binge watch it. And I'll tell you why. It's because as a mental health professional, this show deals with children losing their parents, poverty, the pressure of parents, or parents kind of living through sexual abuse, in terms of exploring your sexual identity. Yeah. And that's what I see in my clinical practice for about 7 or 8 hours a day. And so the idea of coming home and then wanting maybe to just kind of unplug and unwind and find maybe more derivative type of entertainment. Like I really liked cheer, but I'm like, I also need some cotton candy of entertainment as well. So the idea of like just watching that through after a full day of working with young people that are going through that in their real lives in the moment, that would just be too much. That's the reason I never watched Breaking Bad, because at the time I was working at a substance abuse treatment facility, and I'm like, at the end of the day, people are losing their lives or wives, their livelihood, careers to go and then watch this very well made show, but about drug, and the impact it has on people. I'm like, I need something stupid to watch.
Right.
I really do.
Right.
Which in some ways is why, for me personally, I was really fascinated by Monica, and this idea of like a stern, demanding female coach in a lot of ways that pushes people, but has that motherly or maternal aspect to a lot of them as well. And I responded, I think all of America did, to Jerry, because even though Jerry has a very tragic story in terms of living with poverty.
He's so cheerful.
His mom, passed away.
Yeah.
He's adopted by another family, basically. But this guy just has something about his brain that allows him to be encouraging and optimistic and bounce back from hardship, disappointment. It doesn't mean that it doesn't impact him.
Right.
But he's not this cloud of gloom throughout his life.
No, he isn't. And I'm glad you brought up Jerry, because he is so bubbly and light and airy and so thoughtful of others. I mean, there was one of the episodes where he was probably going to replace someone because of something to be on the mat, and he just couldn't do it. Like, he just would not go not really behind his friend back, but just the idea of putting this person to sit down and then him being in the front line. He just couldn't do it. Like, it's just not his character, who he is. And thinking about like where he came from and all the hardship, like you would think he thinks about just himself. Like, I have to survive. I got to do what I need to do. I don't care who, suffers in the end. He's not that way. Like, he's just intrinsically a really good person. So I just thought that was so nice.
Yeah, and without this show, if I ever saw a clip on YouTube or actually was at a show and I came across a Jerry, I'd be like, whoa, this is a little much.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think that really says more about me than Jerry or somebody like Jerry that is just so strong in their optimism and in their encouragement that it can seem like it's showboating, but you see with Jerry, it's not. That's really who he is, which is why cheerleading was probably the perfect outlet for him, is because Jerry starts off the season not on the mat. So the team is 40 team members, but only 20 get to actually do the competitive performance at the national championships, and Jerry starts out not being on the mat.
Right. And being on the mat means that you're actually performing, you're in front of the on the stage.
So even early on, Jerry is known for his mat talk, where when other people are doing it, he's just like, go, you got it, go, get her up, 98 pounds, and it's just like, so right off the get-go, he's not one of the central stars. No. He's not getting to perform. He wants to.
Right.
But he has this ability to encourage other people. Which is really one of the things that I really loved about this docuseries was its emphasis on teamwork and working together.
And work ethics, work ethics of young kids, because we tend to dismiss the younger generation as far as having a hardcore work ethics, but you definitely see these kids are dedicated. Sure. I mean, they are hurt, they're in pain, they're suffering, and then they have other emotional issues going on. Home life is not stable, but they come, and when they're on the mat, they're giving 110%. Sure. Just physically, mentally, emotionally, like they're checked in. So I think just the idea of thinking that kids, having a stereotype that kids don't give all that they can, that's not true. I mean, I did not see that with those characters at all. Like, not at all. Now,
there was a number of other team members that were heavily profiled. You had Ladarius, who was Jerry's roommate, and he's a very physical guy, but he also can really have difficulty regulating his emotions or hiding them. Yeah. You had Lexi, who was the blonde-haired tumbler, so she was one of the few females that really does a lot of her own tumbling and backflips. and then you had Morgan, the young girl from Wyoming, I believe, who
with her grandfather,
who lived with her grandparents, and then also you had Gabby Butler, who was already well known, already had a strong social media following, and you really get to see her parents in a lot of ways in this show. So Ladarius, Lexi, Morgan, Gabby, was there any other of those characters that they profiled that really struck you, or you really had some thoughts about?
Ladarius really, just because of his background, and his mom had 4 kids, I think, or was it 4 kids, I think?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, but just his background, his mom was in jail for a large portion of his childhood, was bullied by his own siblings, just within that dynamic, and because, having his sexuality questioned, and then him wanting to man up, and being more of a man, even though he was questioning and fighting his sexual identity while he, I think, was 9 years old, just trying to figure out, like, who am I? What do I like? What don't I like? What's going on? So he definitely is memorable to me.
Yeah.
Just because of all, like, his hardship, his background, and how he deals with anger and how he deals with rage. Like, cheer is definitely something he wants to do. He's another one of those, like, personalities that you see. Like, like, he stands out. Like, you will definitely see him, but he's constantly struggling with inner demons and things like that, because he's kind of like the opposite of Jerry. Because Jerry is more of humble, shy, quiet, but still bright. Sure. Where Ladarius is not that, but they're roommates, and just kind of seeing how their friendship work itself out, and Jerry's optimism and let's make it better, and let's have a conversation, and Ladarius is like, shut down, I need to go into my hole, let me kind of figure out what I need to do. I thought just the two of them being roommate was interesting.
That was really an interesting
dynamic, because
absolutely.
They're just so opposite of one another. But I don't know, Ladarius is an interesting character to me, like just his background and everything.
Well, and it's a great contrast when you put him and Jerry side by side, and they have this tremendous relationship where both of them are just very encouraging about the other, and how they respect one another, and how both of them find each other encouraging and pushing them to do better. But you think about Jerry, experienced tremendous loss. I mean, grew up impoverished. His mom passes away. Yeah. But the series showcases how he has a strong social support system. Yes. I mean, basically, the way that it was communicated, almost like anybody in his cheer and tumbling, like, kind of team probably would have adopted him, bring him in, because everybody loves him. So he has this strong social support to help buffer that. And then you look at Ladarius, whose mom went to jail, so they were being watched by this old community lady. There was a sexual trauma at a very young age. His older brothers are trying to toughen him up. So in a lot of ways, he's lacking, in terms of, like, Jerry had loss, which is very traumatizing for anybody. Ladarius was really abused. Right. And then he has really very little family or social support. Right. So you see him, he's got trust issues. Right. Right. He shuts down. Right. Even from a vulnerability standpoint, not just when he has difficulty. Right. He cannot manage his emotions very well. So he loves cheer. He wants to be the best. He's got that drive. He's got that restless energy. But when it turns dark, he just does not know how to handle it.
No, I mean, and it's one of those things where you look at Ladarius, and he was, in one of the interviews, he was speaking about, contemplating suicide just because of not having anyone on his back, like having his back, or anyone caring about him. I mean, he's thinking, my siblings are against me. My mother's not around. Like, I have no one. If I'm dead, who would care? Yeah, like, it doesn't matter. And when he's faced against that type of hardship, you see him going back into that mode. Like, when he was ironically almost being replaced by Jerry, he went into dark mode. You know, like just shutting everyone out and just kind of like, I don't want to deal with it. Nobody likes me. No one cares about me. And just going back to that type of coping mechanism. And it's interesting how, again, in that system where Monica does a pretty good job, Monica's the coach, she does a pretty good job about, you know, hey, let's talk about this. What's going on? What do you have going on? Let's get it out of the way. He's just not, he wasn't available.
Yeah.
Like, he just mentally and emotionally wasn't available for that. So she was just like, okay, Jerry, you're up. Ladarius, you're out. And just him taking that in a different way. Like, just taking it personally when it wasn't personal.
Yeah. And Ladarius definitely needs hard structure. He needs people to be very direct with him, because that's what he does to other people. So he's going to respond to that. The show was really interesting. I mean,
it is actually. Yeah.
And you know, you had Morgan, who was a people pleaser and looking for Monica's approval, and she was very fearless.
Yes.
But you also say the other thing that this show does really well is the physicality. As the show went on, my wife and I were just worried because one person after another is getting injured, and you're like, are they going to run out of
kids
performers, or at least the ones that are really skilled and trained, and give them the best chance to win national championships? Because this show highlights how brutal this is to your physical bodies. You know, Morgan's ribs are hurting. Sherp got thrown in that one scene, and there's nobody to catch her. So you see the choreography, you see this one girl being thrown up 10, 12 feet in the air, and then boom, there's nobody there to catch her. And I think she dislocated her elbow or broke her elbow with that. So the idea that cheer is just kind of all fun and games, and it's just cheering the crowd up, this show really breaks down that myth.
It does, and it definitely, I mean, I know we've been talking obviously a lot about the mental health aspect, but it definitely showcased their athleticism. Like, it definitely showcased that cheering is not just, you know, having a good time, but you have these hardcore athletes. I mean, they're gymnasts. I mean, the backflips that they're doing and all these different things, the stretching, the physical toll that this is taking on their young bodies. And of course, they're going to have damage for a life. Like, they're not, this isn't just a moment type of thing. This is something that they're going to be in pain for forever, just because of what they're putting their bodies through.
It's dangerous as contact. I think one girl mentioned she's had maybe 5 concussions through doing cheer. And to me, I'm hoping that this show, Netflix Cheer, helps sort of break some of the stigma around cheerleading. You know, when you think about a lot of other popular mainstream professional sports, there's always those stories about, like, this is somebody's ticket to a better life. This is what saved them from really going down a dark path in their life. And we get to meet some kids through cheerleading. It's the same thing. It's the same thing for them, that without cheerleading, they'd really feel like they were lost in this world. They'd have nobody, whether it be family or teammates or a coach, an adult figure that really believed in them and pushed them. And so hopefully, because I was one of those people, that people will watch cheer and they will kind of start to break away from the stereotypes and caricatures that people automatically assume about cheerleading, and recognize these are real people. These are just not people that are having fun and games and that their life is perfect, but for some, this is their lifeline.
This is their lifeline.